You're on, Dave.
Good morning. Good morning. Happy Easter. I was in an airport in Lima with a bunch of Marines. We were coming back from the desert in Ancon, and we were actually just waiting for a flight back to Costa Rica, and from there to Dallas. And we were all charging our stuff because we hadn't been near any electricity for a couple weeks. So charging MP3 players, GPS, like rechargeable AA for the PBS-14s and stuff, because we didn't know if we were going to have to use all that stuff again. And one of the Marines had brought a power strip, because never enough outlets for like a whole squad, so you always bring a power strip so everyone can charge at the same time. But we plugged it into the wall, and we plugged in some diverters, splitters, and eventually, I think it was Lance Corporal Ramirez brought his iPod up and said he plugged it in, and you just heard and everything was a brick after that. So we had like $300 iPods that were dead and surged, and I lost, like, my camera was gone, lost all my pictures from the whole thing. It was pretty terrible. I don't know how it tried to card, but it did. So if we go ahead and take that kind of image of the power strip and kind of picture the Earth as the power strip, since the Industrial Revolution, we've been plugging too many things in, pretty much. We just kind of figured out that if we dig this black shiny stuff up and burn it, that we can generate power. And we've been doing that for a while, and it served us well. But today I'd like to talk about a new solution that is going to be able to take us into the next century here and provide for humanity a source of clean, safe, and cheap power. Slide, please. So there you go. You see the power strip here. Again, this is kind of an example of what we went through. But again, I'm not a nuclear physicist. I'm not an electrical engineer. I went to high school with a couple people that went to Carnegie Mellon for nuclear physics. So while I'm not, I drink with them, and they've given me some pretty cool articles and stuff that I'd like to read in my spare time. I've spent several hours actually researching this, and I'm going to try to condense it as much as I can, and I think I have succeeded at that. So if you give me 10 minutes of your time today, I think this is a very important thing that is relevant to all of us, because we all use electricity. First, I'm going to go over the scope of the looming energy crisis that's facing us. After that, I'm going to cover why current energy methods are insufficient. And finally, I'll wrap it up with why nuclear power is the solution for America and humanity's future. So first, the world population is expected to be at 7 billion by the end of this year. 7 billion, okay? So we've kind of just been at 6 billion during at least our lifetimes, but it's actually rapidly increasing. And by the year 2050, the UN predicts that it will be at 9 billion. So in 4 decades, we're talking about like a 33% increase in terms of population. So that's pretty big. Not just in numbers, but we're going to have a lot more people actually using electricity. Okay, the poorest 2 billion are actually going to be getting new services. We're trying to bring refrigeration, electricity, air conditioning, heating, television, all these things to poorer countries, especially in Africa and parts of Southeast Asia. So as we bring these new services to these poor areas, the amount of electricity consumed is going to go up, as well as the number of people consuming electricity. We currently take most of our power from methods like burning coal, burning natural gas, burning oil. All right, we've done that for a couple hundred years. And again, like I said, it served us well. But the thing is, these sources are limited, they are inefficient, and they are they're bad for us and they're bad for the environment. So one thing we have to keep in mind is we will run out eventually. There's a point where there's just not going to be any more black shiny stuff to dig up and burn, right? And some people think that may happen sooner than later. Secondarily, it's bad for the environment. Burning coal, burning oil, I'm sure you've heard of greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, global warming. Regardless of the conveniency of the truth, it is happening, okay? It is happening, and we have to be careful of it, because even though the sun's going to explode in 5 billion years, we might not have an atmosphere in the next 200. So that's something we have to keep in mind. All right, burning coal, burning oil, and digging up for these resources is bad for people. The people that are exposed to occupational hazards in the mining industry, in the coal industry, since in the last 100 years, and this actually, the statistics are 2005, so a little bit longer than that, there have been 100,000 coal mining deaths just from mining accidents, not from any type of asbestos, methane gas, any type of exposure. There's 4,000 new cases of black lung every year in the United States from mostly coal miners. In China, it's 10,000 cases a year. In China, there are 440,000 people that suffer from black lung that are still alive right now. And most of that is coal mining. Not all of it, but most of it is coal mining. You also have to keep in mind that these methods are inefficient. Okay, when we burn coal, we get a waste product. That waste product goes into the air. When we dig a mine, when we dig a tunnel, all right, we're poisoning groundwater. We're going under the water table. We have to pump the water out, and it mixes with acids. It mixes with water supplies. So I'd like to talk about what we can do about this. Well, we can't decrease population. That's eugenics, and that's definitely unethical. Okay, the second thing we can think about is reducing services. All right, and I kind of like air conditioning, to be honest with you, even though it doesn't feel like we have it in here right now. I kind of like air conditioning. I love refrigeration because it allows me to eat food that wasn't raised, 10 miles from where I live. All those things are really nice. I like cell phones too. Those things are awesome. But if we were to reduce services, it really wouldn't make that much of an impact because we have more and more people coming on the grid in the next 4 decades. So, what can we do? We can increase the efficiency of electrical means of production. So, alternative sources that are being considered right now, I'm sure you've heard of wind, solar, geothermal, right? Okay, tidal. Those are all pretty cool, and I really hope they work. But the thing is, right now they are so expensive, they're so inefficient, and they're still in their infancy. So things we have to remember are, hopefully, in the next 20 years, we can get these sources to take up about 15% of the world's power. That's a very optimistic outlook. And while I hope we have some miracles in battery power, which is probably the most important thing, is storing this energy because the sun sets for solar, the wind dies, okay? We really need better battery methods to be able to store the energy we produce. However, we do have a solution that is proven, it is powerful, okay, and we've done it for the last 50 years, and it is nuclear power. In the United States, we have had 0 deaths from nuclear-related accidents or contamination, 0. Okay? Now, I can't talk about nuclear power without talking about 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, or the recent Fukushima power plant in Japan. All right, and each one of those could take a 50-minute lecture themselves. But what you have to know is in 3 Mile Island, human error and interfacing with computers, people not being trained properly, they didn't realize that a valve was open, leaked some coolant. All right, the amount of radiation leaked for the people that live within 10 miles of 3 Mile Island was about the equivalency of a chest X-ray. All right, and again, the average amount of radiation per person in the United States is 300 millisieverts. Okay, and this was about 8. 300 millisieverts per year. This was 8, and it happened once. So 3 Mile Island, again, is probably the least worrisome thing. However, when it happened, a movie had just come out called The China Syndrome, and people reacted very severely to the 3 Mile Island incident. Chernobyl. All right, I've got nothing to tell you about this one. This was a reactor design that was 30 years old when they built it. They built it with structural deficiencies. Okay, there were leaks, there were maintenance issues, things were not maintained properly. On the night of the incident, they were running an experiment. They decreased power. Kiev called for more power. They had to spike the power supply. Essentially, there was a steam explosion. Steam exploded, and there was no pressure containment vessel in these old Soviet reactors. Okay, so the steam exploded, and that popped a hole in the top, and it leaked radiation. Killed about 57 people within the first 2 weeks due to radiation poisoning. And the very liberal estimates, because I'm not going to lie to you about this, are about 9,000 cancer deaths since then. 9,000 premature deaths. Okay? So that is by far the worst thing that has happened. And you can't talk about nuclear power and not discuss Chernobyl. Last, the most recent thing this year, the tsunami and the earthquake that happened in Japan and damaged the Fukushima reactor. There have been no reported deaths, 0, and the amount of radiation that we are able to see from there is still not at a dangerous level. Okay, now again, all the information has not been released. This situation is still developing, and radiation sickness is not on center media. Okay, but at this time, it does not look, they are not expecting any deaths or very many premature deaths due to cancer. Again, those explosions were not radiation explosions, those were hydrogen explosions in Fukushima. And we have to keep in mind that this is one of the worst natural disasters recorded in history, since we've been paying attention. Also, about 2 to 3 miles down the road, there's an oil refinery, okay, one of our current means of energy production. This oil refinery exploded immediately on the earthquake and killed a couple hundred people immediately. So, now let's go to why nuclear energy is cleaner for the environment and better for us. There are 0 CO2 emissions from nuclear power, 0. That includes mining for uranium, building the nuclear power plant, and decommissioning the plant in 100 years or so. 0 CO2 emissions. Okay, those numbers come from the Nuclear Energy Institute in 2009. And that is based on an average of CO2 emissions from the last 20 years. So nuclear power is inexpensive. Chris, if you go to the next slide, please. Thank you. As you see here, coal actually releases about 900 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour of energy produced. If you look at the nuclear bar, which you can barely see down there, it's about 5. And that comes from mining for the uranium that is burnt in a nuclear reactor, essentially. If you actually look at the radiation, in 2008, the blue bar there on the graph on the right, is the amount of radiation released by burning coal in the United States. The amount of radiation released by 3 Mile Island is at the bottom, which is the 3rd worst nuclear incident in the world. Can you go to the next slide, please, Chris? Thank you. And as you can see here, this is the cost of all the means of energy production that we currently use. As you see on the far left is solar. It's by far the most expensive, at about 30 cents per kilowatt hour. Nuclear is about 2.09 cents per kilowatt hour. All right, and those savings are passed on to you and I. Even though nuclear power plants are expensive to produce and build and get approved by the government, it is by far one of the most cheap methods of energy production. In the future, nuclear power is actually some pretty exciting things going on. I'm not going to bore you with all of it. There's liquid fluoride thorium reactors, which actually burn the other 99%. So all that waste that we've built up over the last 50 years that we've stored in a mountain right now, we can actually take that back out and burn all of it. There's no waste product left. That's a really awesome thing, okay? And that's much more efficient. Those reactors can be mobile. We can take to disaster relief areas, say if we had another Hurricane Katrina. We can take those reactors and put them in poor developing areas, North Korea, because those type of reactors you cannot make nuclear weapons from at all. So you can take those to the poor developing areas that you're worried about, Iran, okay? And giving these people in these poorer countries cheaper energy will raise the standard of living and allow them to educate themselves. And maybe we can put some Walmarts and Starbucks in there and all that other good stuff. All right, there's also a new Canadian plan that retrofits current reactors to be much more effective and have a longer life. And they've done that with all their reactors, and they're much better. Same with France. France actually gets almost 50% of its power from nuclear energy, and they actually have a way of recycling their waste products. So it's, again, very exciting. I think if we move forward in the United States, we can look forward to lots of that. In conclusion, we need to move away from an energy of resource, which is, hey, look what I found underground, let's burn it, and go to an energy of knowledge, which is solar, wind, and nuclear. So, keep all that in mind. When you go to move into a new place, and there's a nuclear reactor like there is in Limerick, the outlet's about 45 minutes from here. All right, don't be afraid of it. You can go hug it just like you can go hug a tree. Solar, wind, tide, and geothermal are all promising forms of energy production, but they're far from usable on a large-scale basis. Even on almost miracle-level breakthroughs, all right, we can only expect them to take up about 15% of energy production. If we can increase nuclear production by building about 200 to 300 new reactors, we can actually go to 0 CO2 emissions within the next 4 decades. And that other 3 billion people will be able to grow up in an area and in a world that is much more prosperous and safe. Thank you for your time.